Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to ConverZations this Monday. We are very excited to have all of you here. My name is Rachel. I am the Manager of Education and Community Engagement. Today we're going to be talking with Gerhardt, which is going to be a wonderful conversation. But before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to Faye A. Heston for sponsoring the series this year. We are really grateful for that. And I wanted to let you all know that we have our next conversation on November 9th with Destiny Seeby, who is actually a good friend of mine. And they will be talking about women in music, and it's going to be a really awesome conversation. So I hope you will join us on November 9th, same time, same place. You're just gonna log on to the website and do what you did for this one. So now that we can all see each other, hello. Some of you might see the screen a little bit bigger now, but it is so wonderful to be able to have you all here today, and it's really exciting to be able to talk to Gerhardt. So I will start us off, Gerhardt. I think a really good question to start off with would just be, why did you become a conductor?
Because of the money. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I mean, some people know this. My dream was to be the second baseman of the Cincinnati Reds. And that didn't work out because I had polio, although I held on to that dream until I was a junior in high school. Apparently, I'm a slow learner. I at one time wanted to be a lawyer, but then I only wanted to do criminal cases. I didn't want to be stuck with divorce cases or tax law. Then I wanted to be a doctor, and then I hit chemistry. And I thought, no, that's not going to work either. So I wanted to be a junior high and elementary school band director, because that's all we had in Van Wert, Ohio, on the western part of the state. I sat in an orchestra for the first time when I was a freshman at Bowling Green, heard an orchestra live for the first time when I was a freshman at Bowling Green. And the first rehearsal was Dvorak Symphony No. 8 and Wagner, the Meistersinger Prelude.
Ooh.
That's all it took. I was hooked. I was really hooked. And I'm very happy that I had the trumpet teacher that I did. His name was Ed Betts. He was first trumpet in Toledo for a long time. I didn't really practice the trumpet because I was spending all my time in the library listening to recordings and looking at scores. So the beginning of my junior year, I had my first lesson, and he looked at me and he said, you really don't want to be a trumpet player, do you? And I mean, that's a pretty heavy question, coming from your teacher and everything. I said, well, sir, no, I don't. And he said, well, why don't we do this? Half of your lesson, you'll prepare and play trumpet excerpts from the orchestral repertoire. And the other half of the lesson, we'll talk about orchestras and conductors, how to approach an orchestra, how to rehearse. And it was a godsend, really, a godsend. And now, after 40 years, today, I think it's 40 years today.
Today, yeah.
I'm still in Canton, Ohio. Thank God. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell.
I think that's really amazing. And you say 40 years today, and it's actually today, which is really crazy. I did not realize that when I scheduled you on today.
Oh, okay.
So that it just happened to work out. But you mentioned 40 years, and so I wonder if you could just take everyone through the timeline of your career from being at Bowling Green and to now where you are today. Just a lot of time to talk about, but maybe a brief.
Well, let's talk about me being hired by the Canton Symphony Orchestra. I received a call a year before I started as music director from my manager in New York who said, you know, there's an orchestra interested in you. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, the Canton Symphony. I said, the Canton Symphony? Yes, in Ohio. And I'm thinking, and I said, well, isn't that where the Hall of Fame is? I mean, I don't know anything about the orchestra. And at that time, Youngstown was the best of the three orchestras, Akron, Canton, and Youngstown. Franz Bebo, I think, was the conductor then. They had a fine reputation. After I thought about it a little bit, I told my manager, well, I'm not interested. Well, Canton board didn't seem to agree with that answer. So they came on two separate occasions to see me conduct in St. Louis, where I was associate conductor. All of a sudden, I get this call from Bill Blair, who's on the board, still on the board. Also, he was president of the board, offering me the job. And I said, well, Bill, I mean, I can't take the job without hearing the orchestra. And he said, that's all right, we'll fly you in. So they did. And I believe the orchestra was playing a Franck D minor symphony and a Tchaikovsky violin concerto. It was with my predecessor, Thomas Mahalik. And I thought, you know, this is, I mean, it's not a bad orchestra. It really isn't. And I liked the acoustics of the hall. I liked the people I met, particularly Rachel Renkert and Linda Morehouse, who was the executive director at the time. So I said, okay, I'll take the job and we'll negotiate the money, et cetera, et cetera. And I met with Bill and Rachel in Washington, D.C. Why I was in Washington, D.C., I have no idea. But we met at a Holiday Inn restaurant. And after we had dinner, we went to my hotel room. And Bill goes through a few things. Linda Morehouse is lying down on the bed. Bill's in a chair and I'm in a chair. And Bill said, of course, you'll move here in your second year. I said, oh, what? I said, my manager didn't say anything about that. And Bill said, well, I talked to Herbert Barrett, and he said that was fine. I said, well, you didn't talk to me, and I don't want to move to Canton. I'm still associate conductor in St. Louis. Well, he said it was okay, and we want you to move to Canton the second year. And I said, Bill, you know, let's understand something. If it's in the contract that I move to Canton, I won't sign it. And he was a little deflated at that. But I got my way, signed a 3-year contract. So the first rehearsal was like a blind date, literally. I never, the orchestra had no idea about me, I don't think. We didn't have internet like we do, so you can't go onto Facebook and find out about me. They couldn't Google me or anything like that. And the program was Brahms Piano Concerto No. 2 with Andre Watts and Brahms Symphony No. 1. And I must say, I don't think I've ever been as nervous in my career as I was that night. Wow. Because this is a blind date for 3 years. Yeah. It's not a blind date where after one date you say, I don't think so. But the rehearsals went well and everything. And it was the first time I worked with Andre, which was a great pleasure. I've worked with him a lot since then. Since that time, there's not a work in the orchestral literature that I would not do with Canton. Each year, and I don't think it's because I'm getting older or deaf, but each year they seem to get better. A lot of our strings come from CIM, Cleveland Institute of Music. They're very, very fine, very fine. It's an orchestra that wants to play well. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think if they had a conductor that didn't rehearse them, they would be offended. They really would be. Now, a lot of these people were students of musicians of the Cleveland Orchestra, and Cleveland is like that. Yeah. If they find a conductor's not going to work them or just run through things, that's, they basically write you off. Right. But I mean, this is 40 years. I've had job inquiries, job offers actually. North Carolina, when I took that job, said I could keep Canton, and then 1 year later they said I had to give it up, and I said, no, I don't think so. I'm not going to give up an orchestra that is better, and I'm not giving up a board that is more committed to the artistic quality of their orchestra for this.
Yeah.
So after, 40 years, it's been a great 40 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, I remember performances, Shostakovich 10, where I didn't get to sleep until 11 o'clock in the morning because my mind couldn't wind down. It just couldn't wind down. Remember Mahler 9, Mahler 2. I remember the Brahms second piano concerto with Andre. The McDowell piano concerto with Andre. Shostakovich with Nadja. And a few other guest soloists. I really enjoy the orchestra because they want to work, they want to sound good, they want to make music, and that's what I want to do. I want to make music. I want to bring it alive to the extent that I understand what the composer intends, and you really don't know. I mean, they're just notes,
right?
One metronomic marking means nothing compared to, let's say, the verbal indication, allegro non troppo. Well, what does that mean? Allegro, walking tempo, but not much. That it's hard to pinpoint a tempo for that. You have to go for harmonic rhythm. The difficulty of a particular section. I mean, there's only so fast you can go without losing the clarity of the orchestra. All of these things are combined, and I found that this orchestra in Canton is very special.
What do you think I mean, you said it's because they want to be good, they want to be better, but one of the questions that we had talked about is what makes a good orchestra. So what beside, I guess, that drive, that passion, or what else is it about an orchestra that makes it a good orchestra?
A good orchestra is the one with the attitude of making chamber music. They listen to themselves. They don't just follow the stick. I remember my second year in North Carolina, the timpanist came up to me and said, Gerhardt, do you want us to play on the bottom of your beat or at the top of your beat? And I said, well, John, I want you to play together. Well, yes, I know that, but do you want it at the bottom of the beat or at the top of the beat? I said, I don't care. Just play together.
Right.
Because you have 100 musicians in the orchestra, or 80 or 70. Each one is going to interpret your beat differently. Now, by now, the Canton Symphony and North Carolina Symphony knew, after working with me for so long, that in fast tempos, I want them to be at the bottom of the beat. But in adagios, largo, something like that, a Schumann second movement of one of his symphonies, then I would rather them play after my beat. And for a lot of conductors, that takes a little getting used to.
Right.
It's like Furtwängler, okay? Furtwängler's conducting, and he goes, ta-dam, 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 and they start. One of the greatest concert I ever heard live was Giulini conducting Bruckner 8. Oh, we have a cat. Beautiful cat. Bruckner 8 was Giulini in Carnegie Hall.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, I do know who the orchestra followed, because it certainly wasn't Giulini. He was communicating with some. Probably. He's a wonderful musician. You can feel his heart and his soul in the music that he conducts. He's doing Bruckner Symphony number 8.
Mm-hmm.
It was unbelievable. But the string quartet, the first chair string, they were all over the place. The flute was all over the place, and the oboist. They were actually leading the orchestra, and it was heavenly, just heavenly.
Wow.
There have been moments with the Canton Symphony and other orchestras where, in a performance, I stopped conducting because I felt that hey, just let them go, just let them go. And that's probably a minute and a half, 2 minutes, something like that. But that's when it works, okay? That's when conducting, and I would think playing in an orchestra really works when you're on the same wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but where you could do anything, I could do anything that I wanted. It was different, and the orchestra would be with me.
Yeah. I think that's always the goal, is that if a large ensemble can act like they're all intimately next to each other and they can all listen and hear each other and play like they're a chamber group. I just think
yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned Andre a couple of times, and Steve Johnson has asked what's a memorable soloist that you've had. But if you could maybe talk about some guest artists who was memorable. Steve said that it doesn't have to be memorable for maybe a positive reason, but you don't have to. But who has been?
I'll give you an example of both. Okay.
Okay.
Now I love working with not just Solano Sonnenberg. Okay, Lila Jozefowicz, other pianists, Gary Olson. But I must say that my favorite, and I've worked with him a number of times, is Andre. And I'll tell you about the first rehearsal. What is my norm is I meet with a soloist an hour before, and we go through the piece, and I ask them to play most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, he's asking me these questions. So what should we do here? What should we do there? I'm thinking, why is he asking me? He recorded this with Bernstein. This is the first time that I'm conducting the piece. Why is he asking me? So my personality. I told him anyway. And I shared a couple of things with him, and he said that sounds great. And I was just flabbergasted at the humility and the down to earthiness, if that's such a word. The commitment to music making and not the play acting. Does that make sense? The play, with the bravura and all that kind of stuff. He has a lot of that. Oh yeah, right. Jumping up and down. Of course, that's hard to do on the piano. But I've done many works with him. I've done 3 Beethoven festivals where he's played all 5 Beethoven concerti over the course of 1 or 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it was. I remember one. He took ill, and we didn't have a rehearsal for concerto number 1. So I went to his hotel room. I took some chicken soup over that my wife had made, and we talked through it. And the concert came, and we're on stage, and we're going to do it. And I do remember the look on his face when I started the last movement. I think I started it a little quick, and his face was like, and his head went back like, oh boy, here we go. And it was wonderful, just wonderful.
Oh man. Oh man.
I also remember a concert in Pinehurst, North Carolina. I think we were doing Brahms too. And I look over at him, and towards the end of the first movement, I see these little raindrops on the side of the piano, just dripping down. So we finished the movement, and there was a leak. It was a new auditorium, and there was a leak in the roof. So we moved the piano all the way back to the back of the first violins.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's quite a long ways. I mean, to have an intimate musical relationship, okay? But it was great. I mean, it worked out. It worked out quite well. But to see probably my expression and his expression when the raindrops came a coming, so to speak.
That's so funny. So you've probably worked with, I don't know, is it hundreds of guest people maybe, or how many?
Yeah, 200 maybe.
Is there anyone else who stands out to you as a memorable experience that you've had with another guest artist?
Not quite like that. So on the other side of the coin, I remember I guest conducted Grand Rapids. And there was a piano competition winner playing Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto. And this young man had no idea what the orchestra had. I mean, he only knew his own part. So I'm doing the best I can. In the dress rehearsal, we get to the last movement, coda. I stop conducting and I start talking. And the orchestra's playing, the piano's banging away, you know. And then all of a sudden, you know, everyone realized, well, what's going on here? So the orchestra stopped, he finally stopped. And during that time I was saying, you know, if you want to do it that way, that's okay with me. But then you're going to have to wait for me to finish after you finish. Because I said, you know, musically, and I'm just looking straight ahead. I'm not looking at him at all. I said, it is so unmusical, your transitions, that it's like a schizophrenic without his medication. You know, it's just bam, zoom, whoop, ah! And then, you know, 3 times as slow. So I said, and I'm still talking to the woodwinds, and I said, I will see you here tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. If you want, I'll teach you how the piece goes.
Ooh.
I walked on, and I said, you know, break. He showed up. His teacher showed up, and I thought, uh-oh. And the teacher sat in the first row of the orchestra seats. Okay, so that was pretty close to me. And this young student and I worked for an hour and a half. And after the concert, the general manager came up and said, "You're a genius. You're a genius. What did you do?" I said, "I didn't do anything. I just threatened him." You know, and just showed him what he's supposed to be listening to. I sang the orchestra part. Sometimes I had him sing the orchestra part. And it worked out, you know, I mean, it worked out very well.
Wow.
But that's about the only time I've lost it with a soloist.
Yeah. So you mentioned,
yeah, go ahead.
You know, you mentioned guest conducting for Grand Rapids and other places as well. And
yeah.
I think it would be very curious. You talk about, you know, this idea of intimacy and music making. How do you do that, or what is it like when you are the guest conductor, when you are the guest and you are the new, quote unquote, new person in the room?
That depends on the orchestra. I mean, I did a Pops concert with an orchestra to the east of us, and but they couldn't play Glinka, Ruslan, and Ludmila, and I asked for them to do it slowly. This is someplace in G flat major. I asked them to do it slowly, and the guy on the inside second stand said, "Oh, come on, you don't rehearse us like that." So I turned and I said, "Well, guys, all you have to do is play it in tune." And some young violinist in the back said, "Hear, hear." I mean, I thought it was wonderful. And then I came down for the concert. And this older violinist, he must have been 70, something like that. He walked up to me and I thought, oh, I'm going to hear it now. And he said, "Well, you cleaned up nice." And I said, "Well, thank you. You look good too." We got along very well since then. I mean, and they even invited me back twice, which surprised me.
Mm.
So it all depends. Tulsa was really fine orchestra to work with. Okay, it's not Cleveland. Again, of course, Canton isn't Cleveland either. But sometimes you have a connection with the orchestra, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an orchestra out west that I guess conducted, and a violinist came up after the dress rehearsal and said, "Thank you for all the detail work." That was one violinist. The rest of the strings didn't particularly like me. Apparently, I was critical, and I wanted a warm sound, and they didn't want a warm sound. So, it all depends. National Symphony, I got along well, except for the first cellist, but he behaved himself. In this orchestra to the west okay, so Denver, I changed a bowing in an Elgar Enigma Variations. And we took that passage with the cello and the bass. The basses did what I asked for, the cello didn't. So I thought I'd make a kind of a joke. I said, well, geez, it must be my accent. I said, let's do this. And the first cellist said, that's a terrible bowing. So I just turned, I looked at him and I said, well, do it anyway. And he did. But I'm sure we weren't friends. I'm sure we weren't friends at all. But it all depends, it all depends on the orchestra. I guess I conducted Cleveland at Blossom once. Holy Toledo. I mean, what a band. What an orchestra. That's an orchestra that plays chamber music. I think a conductor could get up there and be conducting Brahms 1 while they're playing Brahms 2, and they would play Brahms 2 wonderfully. The conductor could be all over the place. They would just go on their own.
Yeah.
That's guest conducting when it's great.
Yeah. Sometimes it maybe feels like a babysitter. Sometimes it feels like you got invited over for family dinner.
Well, some orchestras don't like to work. They don't want to get into the nitty gritty of a piece. And I actually love rehearsals a little bit more than concerts. Because in the rehearsals, you work on some, and it's perfect. Very rarely does it go that perfect in a concert.
Yeah.
But you got your point across. They're playing with the sound that you want. Listen, when it goes well, there's nothing like it. Okay? There's no greater high than to be with an orchestra that is doing their best, okay? And they're into it. They're listening to one another. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I wish we had a back behind the orchestra seating, because that's the best place when you're so close to the orchestra. The balance might not be great, but I mean, you get to see the spit coming from the horns when they release the spit foam. You get to see the trombones, with their little water bottle spraying the slide.
Yeah.
And then you see the oboes with their little knife, making all these adjustments to the reeds.
Rehearsal.
No, this is this is during the concert too.
Yeah. You bring everything with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, they do.
Yes.
They do. And then after the concert, there's all these little water puddles back by the horn section.
Right. And you don't want to step in them.
Yeah, right.
So something we talked about as well is, and you and Michelle talked about this a little bit this summer, but what it's like to program an orchestra and to actually choose the music and to choose the season. So how do you go about programming a season, or what do you think about? What's your process when you're okay, what do I want the Canton Symphony to play this year?
I need them to play works that they would enjoy playing,
Mm.
a couple works that I would enjoy conducting,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of works that the audience would enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
works that will uh, teach them or train them to be a better ensemble, like Mozart,
Mm-hmm.
certainly Beethoven. You learn from Mozart, Beethoven, and Haydn. That's a given.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I told the board when I first came to Canton that I will meet you 75% of the way on programming,
Mm-hmm.
but I want you to meet me the next 25%.
Mm-hmm.
I said there will be new music.
Right.
Okay. And I've gotten complaints about the new music, and I even had a poem that was sent to me after we did a Bartok piece. Now that's not new music.
It's not,
It
no.
was a miraculous Mandarin, and oh my gee, this lady was so disappointed in me. It was actually a good poem. I wish I would have kept it, but I was so angry at the time I just threw it away. I think the next concert we did a Brahms symphony or something like that, and she wrote me another poem praising me.
Ah.
So I figured it all works out somehow.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting how in the orchestral world, Bartok is considered new, or not even, you know what I mean? New music is
Absolutely, yeah.
years old.
It's unbelievable. My feeling is, have you read The Glass Bead Game?
I have not.
Yeah, it's by Hermann Hesse. It's wonderful, and the premise is, if you do not create new music or new art,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to save the art and the music that has come in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that is so clear.
Mm-hmm.
There was an orchestra I was with. When Leonard Slatkin was in St. Louis, I was his associate conductor for 4 years. He programmed a lot of contemporary music, and audiences. Some of the stuff like Don Herb, some of them just got up and walked out. Slatkin stuck with it and everything. So one of the reasons St. Louis developed a reputation they did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, along with that, I mean, he built a wonderful orchestra there, okay? And then when he left, they hired another conductor who should remain nameless, I guess, who went the other way and just did a lot of Beethoven and Schumann. I love Beethoven. I love Schumann, okay? I love Mendelssohn,
Mm-hmm.
but not to the extent of not performing music of our time.
Right.
Because I really believe in the message of that book, that if we don't enable the music of the present,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be able to protect the music of the past.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened in St. Louis. Attendance dropped.
Mm.
I mean, it's like Muhammad Ali said. He and a friend went to a wrestling match. And the friend said, gee, look at all these people booing. And Muhammad Ali said, yes, but look at all the people that paid to come in to boo. Okay? Now there's some little truth to that, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they went all conservative, the attendance dropped. They lost 10 weeks out of their season.
Wow.
And it's thankfully it's still a great orchestra.
Yeah.
Still a great orchestra. But instead of a 52-week orchestra, it's a 42-week orchestra, which is sad.
Yeah.
Because, Walter Susskind, who was Leonard's teacher, and who was the conductor that brought me there as an assistant in my first year, he built the orchestra. He was a great orchestra builder. We had a fellow by the name of Jerzy Semkov, who was great. He was only there for 3 years, and then Leonard came.
Mm-hmm.
And the orchestra just took off. Just took off. It's exciting to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we got on that, but
I know
As my wife says, I have this talent for being on a subject and going, oh, looky what I have over here to talk about. And
No, I think it's important. I think that's something that's really important. And we've been talking about that a lot in the administration about new music and exposing audiences to what's out there and being diverse in programming. We all agree as a staff, I think that it's important. The name of the book was The Glass Bead Game.
Glass Bead Game, Hermann Hesse. Yeah, great book.
Yeah, Julie Zimmermann was asking. So The Glass Bead Game is what it's called.
Oh, okay. Glass Bead Game.
Also, Claudia would like to know, when conducting in different cities, there's a lot of probably logistics that goes into that, and with coordinating your schedules, and what are the pros and cons of living in the city where you're the conductor, and what's good about that versus what makes it difficult when you're not there, and just questions about what it's like when you're conducting somewhere where you don't live and what that experience is like.
Well, again, I mean, if I'm only a guest conductor, then the experience is basically just between myself and the orchestra.
Right.
You probably meet board members after the concert.
Mm-hmm.
And a greeting, meet press the flesh, I guess they call it. As far as living in the city, nowadays, I don't think many people do, but
right.
It depends on how big the season is,
mm-hmm.
to be quite honest.
Right.
It also depends on if a music director can trust the board and the staff.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now there have been periods of time in Canton where things have been rough, whether it's negotiations with the orchestra union,
Mm-hmm.
or board problems, personality conflicts, and things like that, where I get involved.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that they can feel free to call me
Mm-hmm.
when they feel they need me. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't think I have. It's very interesting. At the same time I was offered Canton, I was offered Florida. And same time I was offered North Carolina, I was offered Florida.
Right.
I was offered North Carolina first.
Mm-hmm.
I turned them down because I thought that Florida would offer me the job. And they did eventually. Okay. So North Carolina, the executive director said, well, you're turning it down. We haven't even negotiated. I said, well, Tom, I don't think there's anything to negotiate. I don't think it's a good match. Well, I can't go back to the board and tell them that you're not willing to negotiate. I said, okay, call my manager, Herbert Barrett. As soon as I hung up, I called Herbert Barrett and I said, look, this guy does not understand the N or the O in no. Just keep him on a line, just keep him on hold, because I think Florida's going to offer. 2 weeks later, Florida offered the job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the phone, and the president of the board said, of course, your second year, you'll move to Florida. I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, well, that's part of the job. I said, well, I'm sorry, I can't move to Florida because I have, so far I still have St. Louis. Okay. And we left it in another world. Okay. And so I called my manager and I said, Florida just offered me the job, and call North Carolina again, ask for more money, tell them I'll sign for 1 year, because North Carolina at that time was a cancer in the music industry. The board, oh my God. Anyway, they said I could keep Canton.
Mm-hmm.
And after the first year, you know, I mean, there had to be changes. And I was lucky enough that, you know, the board chairman told Sharon, that my wife, that, you know, maybe I'm a good board chairman to help restart an orchestra, but I'm not very good at bringing them to a higher level.
Mm.
So I resigned. And then we came to the executive director. My second year, there was an 8-week strike.
Mm.
Okay. And I'm not saying this because I'm proud of it. I'm just saying how frustrating it can be. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We had a board meeting. I asked for a board meeting with the executive committee, and I had their proposed contract in hand. I said, you know, where do you get these ideas in the contract? That at any time you can just lop off musicians from the payroll, or you can just cut weeks. And the assistant to the, you know, the aforementioned president or chairman of the board said, oh, well, it's right here. It's right here. And he pulls this out of his coat pocket, you know, and he said, it's right here. And I said, well, what is that? He said, well, this is just a textile mill contract. Right, a textile mill contract. You know, comparing apples and prunes. I went home, Sharon and I and Peter were sitting at the dining table. I sat down, I didn't say anything. I was so upset, I probably couldn't even see straight. And how at that time the orchestra was being treated. Mm-hmm. And poor Anna, who was 6 years old, said something in a Southern accent.
Yeah.
I said, Anna, you were born in the North. I hope you die in the North. And I don't want to hear any more Southern accent. My wife goes, wham! I mean, she hit me so hard. It hurt. And it hurt for several days.
Oh, gosh.
I told her, you ruined my career. You know, so, you know, I mean, I wanted so much to get out of there. But luckily, I didn't. Because we changed board chairman, we got a new executive director, and things started to go up.
Yeah.
Quality of the orchestra improved. I mean, first time I did Mozart Symphony number 40 with them. I came home and I said, I'll never do Mozart with them again. First time I did Mahler with them. I'll never do Mahler again.
Yeah.
But I was able to get to them. They listened. The Kavafian sisters played Mozart Sinfonia Concerto for violin and viola, and they said, finally, to me after the performance, finally, an orchestra that knows how to play Mozart. And I took that as a great compliment, not only to me, but to them.
Right, right.
So I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah. So it's this, when you almost, the trust that you have in an administration and a board is what allows you to be able to be away for.
Yes, I think so. I think, listen, it's like a piece of pie that's cut into 3 slices. If you don't have the board chairman or president, the president, CEO, and the music director, conductor on the same page, it's not going to work.
Right.
It's not going to work at all.
Yeah. I think that's, yeah, it's important that the music is matched by a passion within the organization as well.
Exactly. And what's so great about this board, I think I can safely say that from the beginning, this board has always made their priority the artistic quality of the orchestra
Mm-hmm.
and the artistic quality of the programming.
Mm-hmm.
Save for a couple of those that don't like music past Brahms, something like that. Okay, and we have a couple of those, you know, and which is all right. I can deal with that. One of the board members started an advisory committee. I said, "Oh, well, no, okay. If you want to do that, that's fine with me. What's the title going to be?" Well, it'll be an advisory committee. I said, "Okay, that's fine with me." So maybe the third meeting, I felt the need to say, ladies and gentlemen, you do know that this is an advisory committee. And this committee advises me. And I listen to the committee and I take everything to heart. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to acquiesce to all of your wishes.
Right.
I wouldn't be a music director if I did. I'll tell you, a lot of music directors get caught wanting people to like them.
Mm.
And then they start talking one thing to an orchestra musician, one thing to the board, one thing to the management.
Mm.
And what happens then is when they find out this is going on, then the conductor loses all credibility.
Right, right.
And then, and if any conductor is in this profession to make friends, I've got news for him. It's not going to happen.
Right, right.
It's not going to happen.
That's really interesting. I think I love to watch your relationship with Michelle and how you two work together. I think it's it's a good testament to sticking to your guns, but also sticking to the artistic vision and having the same idea of what that is. So it ends up working out in everyone's favor.
Yeah. That's very, very important to me. She's very good. She's top notch.
Yeah.
In my estimation.
And so are you.
Well, thank you. Can I have a raise? No. What, you said no. No, that's all right.
Huh? No, I didn't say anything.
No, we're fine.
So another part of this puzzle, you talk about the musicians of the Canton Symphony and how they are really good, and we get a lot of the string players from CIM. But what is the audition process like for specifically in Canton, and how do you get those good musicians and make sure it's a fair process and kind of craft and hone this orchestra that we see in the concert hall?
Principal bassist who was on the orchestra committee, this is about 8 years ago.
Mm.
He once said to me during auditions, he said, I don't know how you pick people, but it seems to work. I said, well, thank you. I mean, nowadays we do it behind a screen, but I do insist that there be a finals and that I hear the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can tell a lot by their face, their demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to ask them something different tempo, whatever, you can tell a little bit how they're going to be to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I released a violinist after only 1 year, second chair, first violin in North Carolina. Mm. And a couple of them, I said, I'm not going to renew your contract. And a couple of the violinists came up and said, why didn't you renew his contract? I said, he never prepared for the rehearsals. Mm. Well, did you tell him that? No, I'm not going to tell him that. That is expected. Yeah. If I have to tell him that, and then he prepares, and then he gets tenure, which way is it going to go? Mm. Yeah. I said he's not the right makeup for this orchestra. He's not the type of person I want a person that's hungry to make music, that considers it a joy. Now I know it can be a drag being a 52-week orchestra, a 46-week orchestra, and doing Beethoven 5 for the upteenth time. But you know, I've told a couple players, if you don't like your job, you owe it to yourself to quit,
Right.
to find something else.
Mm-hmm.
For yourself, you don't, you know, and also your colleagues. You sort of owe it to them, but you owe it to yourself to find something that makes you happy.
Right. Yeah, I think music is, I think, one of the jobs in the world that if you don't like it, you should not be doing.
Oh, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's a 24-hour, basically it's a 24-hour gig.
Mm-hmm.
We rehearse when other people are working.
Mm-hmm.
We perform when other people are relaxing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a life encompassing profession.
Right. Right. I think that's a very, it's one of the few professions where it is really just your makeup. It is who you are. It is more a part of you than, you don't really clock off necessarily. You are always
Right. Well, I don't clock off. I'm always thinking about the orchestra,
mm-hmm.
or programs. You know, making out programs, they can take up to a year to get to the final program. Okay, I can make out programs that look good on paper,
Mm-hmm.
but I just feel there's something missing, or there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it aside for a while. I let all of these thoughts incubate,
Mm-hmm.
all right? And they're just jumbling around there in the mind. And all of a sudden, something comes to me, and bingo.
Yeah.
That was the correct choice.
Mm.
It's hard to program. There are a few music directors that will give the general manager a list of works that he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the general manager's job to pick the soloist and the repertoire for the soloist. As a music director, I think that's sad. I think the music director should be responsible for all the programming.
Right.
Should even have his hands in the pops programming.
Yeah.
You know,
mm-hmm.
or the educational program.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, supposedly, artistically, I'm the top dog, head honcho, whatever you want to say, and I'm responsible for that.
Right.
Okay. Oh, trash. Right. Sorry. Oh, I'm up a notch. It's a spam risk.
Oh no.
Sorry, I'll turn it off. A spam risk. Yes.
Oh. Yeah, I think that it's just the art. You know, an orchestra. It's hard to drive a ship whose sole purpose is to perform and try to educate and entertain and be a valuable part of a huge demographic of people's lives. You know, it's you're reaching people who are babies with their grandparents at educational concerts, to in the seats at classical concerts, to you know, it's this huge range of people that come through the doors, and the responsibility that.
Right. We had a situation where we had an opening night that was not too well attended. We had a percussion concerto in Prokofiev 5, I think. And there were several musicians that were really upset about that. And the next rehearsal, got on the podium and I said, look, you don't understand. We do this for us. We play for us. Okay? I don't conduct the audience. I conduct for the music.
Yeah.
Okay? The audience, I hope, likes what we do.
Yeah.
And appreciates what we do. But don't play for the audience. Play for yourself.
Right.
Because that's who you have to satisfy the most.
Mhm. And if
We
you're
are our worst critics.
right, and if you're authentically in the music, then by default, the audience will become more invested because you're
Yes.
an embodiment of what's happening. So
There were a couple times early in my career in North Carolina when I've come out on stage, shake the concertmaster's hand, and they said, "Well, we're going to win this one. We outnumber them." So you know, I mean, what are you going to do? But luckily, I mean, Canton is a wonderful. I must ask. This goes until 1 o'clock. Are there any questions from anyone?
it's gonna, yeah, we'll have time now until you know, if we want to stay a little bit after 1, that is fine. I'll stop the recording here in just a second. That way people can just talk freely. But yes, we will have a time for questions. But any last thoughts before I end the video, Gerhardt? Before I end the recording of it?
Yes. I wish that people would wear a mask. I wish that people would investigate what is going on and what is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a difference between ignorance and stupidity.
Yes.
Ignorance is when you haven't been exposed to something.
Mm-hmm.
Stupidity is when you have been exposed to the facts and you discount them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's tough for all of us, especially this year when we can't come back yet, and we won't be able to. And it's it's your 40th, and all we want to do is just gather back together. So
I'm doing an orchestration for strings, percussion, piano, and harp of the Shostakovich 8th String Quartet.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this bucket list where I want to do 3 or 4 of the string quartets, orchestrate them, and then get them recorded by someone.
Right.
That's keeping me somewhat busy in exploring new repertoire. Okay. Mm-hmm. Outside, I mean, looking at new scores, reading.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, I am antsy like you wouldn't believe. I want to see my players. I want to see my musicians. I'm sorry that they have to go through this. It is so unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's been sad for me. I've only been able to hire like 9 players since March for the tiny little things I've been able to figure out a way to do. And it's, I'm excited to be able to, pay them for an educational concert at least. Mm-hmm. Even if they're not actually playing on the stage, I get to pay them for one. So that's exciting for me, but
that's great. Yes.
It's, we work through it, and I think a
number of them make it. I mean, sure, that from, we are a small orchestra in that we are not a full-time orchestra, okay? Mm-hmm. So a lot of the players have other jobs. Right. They either play in 2 or 3 other orchestras, which are not playing, or they work at Starbucks, or they're typist, or something like that. And it's, I told the orchestra once several years ago, I said, it just blows my mind how great you could be if we were a 46-week orchestra.
Oh, that would be
every week.
Right. Oh man, that would be.
There's still a wonderful orchestra to me. They mm-hmm. really are. They're exciting. They're young. They're hungry. I'm old, but I'm still hungry.
Well, thank you, Gerhardt, so much. I'm gonna stop the recording right now.
Thank you.
People can hang around and ask more questions until whenever.
Great, I would love it.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.